2026. In this room here and today, the 12th of June 2026, we are going to be looking at harnessing opportunities as well as navigating the challenges that are presented before us as we start the next financial year, which will be officially picking up on the 1st of July 2026. We are talking about a national budget that is going to be for 84.39 trillion Ugandan shillings. Of that, you do have the Uganda Revenue Authority having to contribute to the revenue domestically at 44 trillion Ugandan shillings. Now, there are opportunities that we must realize as a country, but also we must be cognizant of the fact that there are challenges, turbulences that we must navigate in different sectors in order to be able to see success at the end of the financial year. Now, speaking of opportunities, we get to look at internationally. One of the opportunities that are existing right now is the fact that there's a war in the Middle East. How is that an opportunity? Because as a country, in the next financial year, there has been a commitment from government, and this is through the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, commitment to have our first oil production. And so with the international pressure, it puts pressure locally on our government to ensure that crook or nail, that challenge becomes an opportunity. But at the same time, currently, it's a challenge. As you are coming into town today, I know the fuel prices get you double guessing as to why you are driving, as to why you still have that manufacturing plant open, because the fuel prices as of this morning, you're looking to a litre of diesel going as high as 6,800 Ugandan shillings. We are entering the 7,000 mark. This is a picture that we have seen before, courtesy of COVID-19, and that was a challenge that was navigated by people opting for bicycles, which is a statement, something of the president made reference to when he was giving the State of the Nation address and saying, why do we have to worry about fuel? Why do you need fuel to go and serve the people, to extend services to the people? You can as well opt for the bicycle. Can we opt for bicycles yet again? No. But at the same time, we have an opportunity in there because we get to go electric vehicles, electric bicycles, electric motorcycles. We have seen one of those organizations bringing in e-bikes, and so far they're doing good on the market. Of course, where to charge from is a challenge that can be navigated very well according to the respective sectors, but at the end of the day, that too is a challenge in terms of the price of fuel, and the opportunity is that it opens doors and people's eyes to realize that they can go motor electric, that being an opportunity. There's so many things that we're going to be talking about, focusing on different sectors here on the ABSA NTV post-budget dialogue. I am Priscilla Regina Nalwaga. I'm not doing this alone. I'm being joined by Viola Kusasira, who is also going to give us a picture of the people in the room, the who is who, which sector is well represented, and what is going to be their contribution to what we will be seeing as the financial year 2026-2027's success in terms of full monetization of our economy. Viola?
Much, Priscilla, my colleague, and thank you very much, dear viewer, for joining us this morning. My name is Viola Kusasira, and we are coming to you live from Serena Hotel here in Kampala, and we are here for the NTV Absa Bank post-budget dialogue, where we actually zoom in closer to the national budget that was read yesterday and trying to understand what exactly this means for an ordinary citizen like you and I. We actually see the figures, but we want to break them down and understand why it is very important is that we have different key industry players, and that's to say the business community, civil society organizations, different people from sectors like tourism, education, health, and several other sectors that are very crucial to our existence as citizens here in Uganda. So just important figures to actually note, ones that I took a keen interest in as a person. I believe you did take interest in several other figures, but for me it was actually the entirety of the budget. It stands at 84.3 trillion shillings, the biggest budget Uganda has seen ever, and this has gone up from the previous budget, which stood at 72 trillion shillings, and that is about 16% of an increase, which is also another key aspect of this budget is that 40% of it is going to debt financing. And another thing about our debt here as a country, our debt is at 50.3%, which is actually I beg your pardon, 53.0%, which is beyond the World Bank threshold of any country's debt that is actually stable, or where you could say the country is out of the red zone. We are clearly in the red zone, according to the World Bank. And so 40% of the budget is going to clearing and financing the debt. But also, just to look at the figure that was allocated for debt servicing, that is 33.4%. And we also have another key figure here, which is 13.5 trillion shillings that was allocated for human capital. Under human capital, you have things like education, things like public service and health. So our population can't function without being able, if a population has very ill people or unhealthy, we are facing the Ebola crisis, but it's being managed. So if a population, for example, is ill, you can't have the economy running, because after all, the people within the economy are the engine, the fuel that's needed to run the economy. So you have human capital standing at 13.5 trillion shillings, which I actually believe is well deserved. And then you also have other sectors high up there in figures. That is security, that is always debated year in, year out. So the question is, how is this budget going to translate into improving our livelihoods as Ugandans, but also, say, for example, the cost of living? How prepared are we in this budget to be able to help you and I to be able to feel comfortable and say this was for us and not against us? So we have got people from the Uganda Revenue Authority. We have got different investors within the business community. We also have different people from the tourism sector, as I had mentioned. So we have a lot of people that are going to be diagnosing this budget and seeing what exactly it's about. Is it for you and I, or is it actually against us? So let's take a break. But when we return, please make sure you sit and get comfortable, because we're about to get into the meat of what this budget is all about. So stay tuned. You are watching NTV Uganda. I'm Viola Kusasira.
The financial year budget is one of the biggest we have ever had, and in the entire government, in the entire Uganda history. It's at 84.4 trillion Ugandan shillings, and it is coming at a time when we are also expecting our oil, and for the first time we are seeing direct oil revenues contributing to the budget. We usually had some small money from the petroleum fund, but this time around we have 1.4 trillion Ugandan shillings from oil revenues. So that's a critical and important element that Ugandans also need to understand, that we have started now harvesting from oil revenues. The budget has been structured in a way of trying to promote private sector development in this country. If you look at the tax proposals, there are some tax proposals that are for that. We still have some tax exemptions, 10 years and above. Those are bringing heavy investments, been given some tax holidays. We still have some small and medium enterprises that are starting in this country, local industries. They have been given up to 3 years to start submitting, paying taxes, corporate taxes. In terms of investments, we are seeing government really putting a lot of emphasis on ensuring that the private sector can thrive in this country. One of them, we are seeing heavy investment in infrastructure, more than 10 trillion. All this is trying to ensure that the transporting structure is ready for private sector growth. If I was in government, I would not have brought new taxes, because the current tax regime has made inflation subdued, stabilized the shilling, and improve our outlook in terms of GDP. We are set for a double digit. These rates now are likely either to slow us or to bring us back. For example, I would not tax petrol. I would not tax fuel. Considering the kind of geopolitical tensions we have, I would not do that, because the 200 we have added on, plus the impact of the tensions in the Middle East.
Well, having a big budget wouldn't be a problem, but how does it speak to the people, to the ordinary citizen? Is it able to patronize their needs? Because we see that a huge, we have 84 trillion budget, but who is taking the lion's share of the budget? Because we need to move away from numbers, which we go to move the budget to citizens. What do they need? 70% of the budget is going to recurrent expenditure, going to debt servicing, wages, salaries, non-wage, and every other thing. And we see that 30% is left. We see that there is limited room for flexibility to economic shocks. For the other governments can respond to economic shocks. We see that each and every year that we have pandemics and government keeps on borrowing. The theme of the budget is for monetization, but how are we funding the monetization of the economy? We need to see that the business environment are given affordable credit, because with the government borrowing domestically and increasing year per year, we see that they're crowding out the private sector on how much credit, how much money is available for them to borrow.
Overall, this budget focuses on the right things. A, it focuses on human capital development. B, it focuses on pulling people out of poverty as a country through rolling out programs like the parish development model, through supporting the growth of the private sector, through the Uganda Development Bank, through the Myoga scheme and so on. So I think that the budget is well anchored within the overall priorities of the country. That's NDP4 and Vision 2040, as well as the tenfold growth strategy. The budget is very strong on livelihoods, on poverty reduction, but I don't think it's very strong on improving the business environment. For instance, making it easier for SMEs to start and thrive, making it easier to pay tax and so on. So there are still constraints in the business environment that still limit not only the starting, but also the survival of businesses once they've been started. But also, an unconducive business environment makes it difficult for investors to come.
So much for being with us. So once again, welcome to the ABSA NTV Post-Budget Dialogue 2026. And this is in partnership with Deloitte Uganda, that has been in the business of ensuring that your assets are managed and you know the risks that you're taking, and they're well calculated for the last 60 years in Uganda. And as we do pick up the mantra of the day, the theme is plain and simple. Trusting where the opportunities are, but also navigating the challenges that are before us. I am Priscilla Regina Nalwoka, and welcome. We are going to be having a side discussion with some of the stakeholders that are in the room today to help give the full picture of what the realities are on ground, especially in their different perspectives and also capacities. You do have the manufacturers that will be affected by the decisions that have been made by the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. You do have the side of ensuring that there's accountability and transparency that comes through, especially for the next financial year, given the closing one, and corruption being one of those challenges that has come through towards the end of the current financial year 2025-2026. As we head into the 2026-2027, how about the investment climate? How about those that have investments in Uganda and are outside? How will they be able to protect their gains? Well, those are some of the discussions I'm going to be having with my panelists this morning. But just to give you a quick rundown of what to expect in the room, we're going to be having remarks that will be from the Managing Director, Nation Media Group Uganda, and that will be Susan Sibira. Then we'll later on be hearing from Absa Bank Uganda and the Managing Director there, David Wandera. And then we will have a presentation, and this presentation will be by the Director, Tax and Legal. This is Deloitte Uganda. Then we'll also be looking to a fireside chat, and this is with the Permanent Secretary and Secretary to the Treasury, Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, and that is Ramadan Govi, who will be joining us shortly. And then we'll get into the panel discussion which we'll be looking to harnessing opportunities and navigating the economic realities that we are facing in the country, from oil and gas. That's a challenge and an opportunity. You do have the new tax regimes that people must deal with and face and contribute to in the next financial year. What are the opportunities there, and what will be the challenges? And then we'll also get to look at an audience really perspective of the stakeholders that are in the room, as you're seeing it in my background. And then later on we'll put it to wraps, finding a way forward as different stakeholders in this room today, navigating the challenges but more so picking up on the opportunities that are before us. And therefore, as we get into the theme of the day, to break it down, on the side, I do have distinguished gentlemen and a lady that are going to be helping me unpack. First of all, really unpacking what was delivered yesterday to the nation and to Parliament, the 12th Parliament, and that is the national budget reading and also the President's speech, the commitments and the highlights and the priorities as we are heading into the full monetization of our economy as a country. My guest, Stephen Kaboyo, to my immediate left, who is Alpha Capital Partners, a leader, one of the pioneers in Uganda's capital market. Stephen, good morning to you.
Good morning, Priscilla. How are you?
It's very good to have you. You were making a joke that we have an annual debt every year, this time of the year, we are always meeting, talking about the same thing.
That's correct.
Has anything changed for you between last year and this year?
Well, so many things. A lot of water has gone under the bridge, Priscilla. When you look at the global events that are really influencing the domestic economy, there are things that we never had last year, which have come to manifest. Most urgently, and very important one, is the energy shock that we're going through because of the Middle East crisis. Okay. As you know, energy shock is very key in everything that we do, and therefore going forward, that's one of the major exogenous factors that the economy faces as a challenge, and how we wiggle out of that leaves so many unanswered questions. So really for me, as we get into this new budget spending plan, the key issue is how the authorities make the economy resilient, adapt to the emerging shocks, and remain on track to be able to keep the agenda that has been set out of double-digit growth going forward.
All right. We also do have Deloitte Uganda, who is our partner on this post-budget dialogue, and representing Deloitte on this panel, I do have Pamela Saka, who is the tax manager with Deloitte Uganda. Pamela, good morning to you. And just from your perspective, before we even focus on next year, what have been the opportunities in the current financial that will be closing?
Oh, thank you very much. So we've seen government give us quite a number of opportunities. We've seen exemptions, the agriculture sector, manufacturing, ICT, and all people needed in the current year was to meet the threshold, and which government seems to be emphasizing through the PDM, through financing small groups of farmers and individuals. So we have seen waivers in place for taxes and penalties. We have also seen an exemption currently for the past 2 years. So that really is a sign that the government is looking at the long term. And with the hope that with maybe the handing of these taxes, the new people included in the tax funds and continued compliance will help get us to where we need to be.
Okay. Alan Senyo, and also joining us from the Uganda Manufacturers Association. The year has been quite a busy one for you, and as you're coming onto this table as a policy maker, what are some of those policies that have harnessed the environment, creating opportunities for you in the financial year that is running out?
A wonderful good morning to the viewers and to you, Priscilla, and my fellow panelists. From our perspective, allow me to take the perspective of balance. The government is in a very interesting situation where it has to balance between what comes in and what goes out. If you start at the global side, we are seeing a lot of turbulences in the global sphere, especially in the Middle East, and that literally affects us because of not just the oil or the petroleum products which come to Uganda, but also the derivatives thereof. And these all affect us. We are seeing an increase in basically transportation costs because of the fuel costs, and also we are seeing some of our raw materials which come in from outside having increased in price. On the national level, we are seeing an increase in economic growth. It is hovering at about 5.66%. That is on the growth side, and on the expenditure, and we're also seeing in the budget an increase of the budget from 72 to 84 trillion. That's about an increase in 16%. We are seeing an increase in domestic revenue collection of a gain of about 16% if you take that level. But what we have to understand is the economy growing at equivalent levels of expenditure, because otherwise you end up overheating on one side, having high expenditure but low increase. So we are going to delve more into that and see how then the country is able to look at the few opportunities which are in there and then try to grow the economy from a productive side of view.
Our theme is very interesting today, harnessing opportunities and also navigating challenges. But I think from your expertise, you can agree that wherever there's a challenge, there is an opportunity. And wherever exists an opportunity, there's some challenges you might incur, as has been mentioned by some of you. Of course, the mention of the geopolitics and the impact of that on businesses and our economy here locally. We get to look at another opportunity as well as a challenge. You do have a new Minister of Finance Planning and Economic Development, Henry Musasizi. You're looking at a new government that is reshaping itself for the next 5 years. You're looking to a new parliament that has to deal with a budget that was not really decided by them, by another parliament altogether. You have to look at the oil and gas, which has been promised to us that this particular financial year we will be seeing the fast flow coming through. There's the increased taxation and of course the realities of that in the budget. Given the realities that we're seeing, if there's increase on fuel and then there's a tax addition of 200 Ugandan shillings, and currently I see less vehicles on the road because they have to make an investment decision. It's affecting manufacturing. I know you're feeling the weight of that. Then there's the element of Ebola, unplanned for, but it's here and we must navigate this challenge. So let me start with you, Stephen. When it comes from the perspective of the capital markets and investments, when you sat down and listened to the speech yesterday from the Ministry of Finance Planning and Economic Development, where do you see the single outstanding signal that we could arrive at full monetization?
Priscilla, that is a tough question. For me, I would like to come from the point of the financing strategy of government that was outlined in the budget yesterday. When you look at it, it does not give me a lot of confidence in terms of taking us where we want to be. One, when you look at the fiscal side of things, we are at a worse point, the weakest point in my view compared to last year. When you look at the debt levels that we have, 53% GDP, debt ratio to GDP. That's quite huge compared to last year where we are around 46 when I take stock. That is a huge challenge that we face. When you look at the debt service is accounts for about 35% of the budget. Literally, all the expected revenue collection for the year, URA collections, if we put it that way, will go towards financing the debt. So where are we going to get the taxes to fund the other aspects of the productive sectors of the economy? So that is a question that we must tackle head on and deal with it. There's no way you can collect all the revenues in the country for 1 year and go towards paying debt service. So what is left?
The tax manager is here. Maybe she could help us really give us that perspective that if 44 trillion and 3/4 of it is going to what he's saying, it's going to productivity to feed into the priorities that the government has put in there seems to be minimal. Where's the balance, or how do we rearrange to find the opportunity?
Thank you, Priscilla. I think we are where we are. We have huge debts, and it needs to be repaid. So what the government is trying to do is prioritize it, stabilize businesses, including taxes. And then once that is done, because the tax exemption is available, we need to be compliant for which one. And if you already has your information, what that means for you is when the tax exemption they'll have the rate. So you start to pay the payment. So I think government is using a carrot and stick. Let's give them a plate, give them, and let's replay. So, and that's why I mentioned earlier that we are playing the game. We saw last year that businesses, startups were given an extension in 3 years. So today, government may lose out on money, but in 3 years' time, they'll have the data. These businesses will have recapitalized what should have been business taxes, and then we shall see steady growth. So this is not, I look at with the oil, of course, we are very excited about the oil. So we see that once as people then the taxes. So what's happening right now is is exerting a lot of pressure on the so and what is it's causing frustration. We've seen businesses close. We've seen the social leave, we saw game leave, and we've seen companies restructure to put their manufacturing countries that are more just abroad. But I think that should change over time. It has to change.
Okay. And the overtime change, is it possible in the next 365 days, or it's going to have to take longer?
I don't anticipate that will happen. The next 365 days, Priscilla, I anticipate that the taxpayers that have been paid this year will have no pressure.
Priscilla, just allow me.
Okay, just a minute. I do have my colleague Viola, who is also having an interaction with the guests that we are hosting here on the ABSA NTV post-budget dialogue, and they are representing different sectors. We were able to listen into the speech yesterday on the address for the national budget, financing the next financial year, and they have their 2 cents on where the opportunities could be lying and what challenges they have to navigate through. Viola, over to you.
Thank you so much, Priscilla, and thank you, our dear viewer, this morning. I'm Viola Satira, and we are still talking about the budget for 2026-2027, that is 84.3 trillion shillings. And right now, I am joined by Robert Chigongo. He is a Sustainable Development Goals Analyst, and he's going to be talking to us about how the budget actually feeds into the Sustainable Development Goals. So, Robert, you're welcome, and thank you for joining me. Talk to us about how exactly the budget is relevant to the Sustainable Development Goals for Uganda as its contribution.
Thank you so much, NTV, and all our viewers. My name officially is Robert Chigongo. I'm a Sustainable Development Analyst. Our work is to monitor how the government is implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. So there's nothing that the government can do or cannot do without a budget. So first, this budget is going to facilitate the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. From Goal 1, ending poverty, that is the social sector development, agriculture. I've seen a lot of money allocated to agro-industrialization, where I'm also a coffee farmer, that I think that money will trickle down to me as a coffee farmer from the village. I participate in the primary coffee processing, so I believe that money will trickle down to me as a primary coffee processor. So overall, I'm looking at how it's going to impact the implementation of the SDGs in Uganda, from good health, ending Ebola, from merging the shortcomings, the economic shortcomings that we've seen, the global shocks that we are facing, and all other related issues within the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So government is on track with the budget. 84 trillion shillings is not bad enough, but how it's going to impact the ordinary person, that's what matters most. We believe in leaving no one behind. We want everyone on board.
Speaking, Robert, about impacting the ordinary person, I just want to quickly understand how you view the fact that 40% of this budget is actually going to debt servicing, and of that as well, 12.4 trillion shillings is going to interest payments alone. How then can you convince me or any of our viewers that you actually have any money left for the rest of the sectors?
I think that comes back to the government of Uganda, how it's working around minimizing debt borrowing. But I believe there is some money that is still left for others. Like I told you, 2.4 trillions to the agro-processing is not bad enough. But it's not bad enough. It's not bad at all. But how it trickles down to me as a coffee farmer and a primary coffee processor is much more important. Because when I buy my coffee from the farmer, I process it into the beans, and I sell to the next person in the chain. That's what matters most. Government must use this budget to put an enabling environment for me as a primary coffee processor so that I thrive in business. And that's what matters most, so that I maximize profit and I'm able to pay the taxes that they are correcting, so that it sprinkles to all other sectors, and we have the meaningful service delivery that we endear to see.
Okay, thank you so much, Robert. We are going to be talking to somebody else. Thank you for coming for the dialogue, and I wish you the best here.
Thank you so much.
All right, so we have another of the. Oh wow! Also, let me. Good morning. Oh, good morning to you. So I'm going to you first. How are you doing? And welcome. I'm good.
Thank you.
Yes, talk to us about the 84.3 trillion budget for 2026-2027. You're here for the dialogue. What exactly would you hope to hear from this dialogue, or what are some of the questions that you still have about this budget?
Well, first, I would like to thank the fact that I'd like to thank government. The fact that we have reached 84 trillion as an economy is good. The ambition to have a $500 billion economy is something that I would love to associate myself to. But I also believe to attain that budget, there are still aspects that have to be addressed. And the minister yesterday spoke so well about human capital development as an enabler for us to attain that $500 billion economy. However, the investment to attain it, he actually alluded to the fact that education is the most powerful instrument or a tool for the economy to grow. But it's not commensurate. The investment is not commensurate. It's 70%. And I'm seeing 70% as not something, as a very low investment. You know, if you want to attain that, you must invest in it. And
about the human capital investment or the allocation, 15.3 trillion was allocated for human capital, and I understand you're an education specialist. So in there we have education. What are your thoughts about how we've handled education, but also our investment in education, being that it's the backbone of who then goes to run the economy at the end of the day?
Well, education is premised on teachers. And over the years, teachers have expressed concern about their remuneration. And I think the 6 trillion that's being accorded to the education sector, I believe, is minimal. It's quite modest. It's an amount that should be elevated, probably at least doubled, for reasons that we need to have teachers attracted into their profession and stay in their profession. That's the only way you're going to have it. Two, we need to address the foundation of education, especially pre-primary and primary. I appreciate the fact that the budget recognized pre-primary education, but it also recognized the intention to double their salary. But I think that structured way in which they are going to increase their salary, I think, is a bit slow. They should do it much faster. Fail to understand the rationale for why the science teachers were really amplified. You know, I know we're talking about ATMS budgeting, but we need to have the teachers stay in their profession and love their profession. And that's the only way we shall have the kind of workforce we want for the $500 billion economy.
Thank you very much, and I wish you very good deliberations in the dialogue.
Thank you. Thank you.
All the best. Thank you so much. That is an educationist that I was talking to. Education is one of the biggest, concerns for our country, in as well as health. Those are the two most sensitive that I've had conversations on X and everywhere else that I've been in different, summits and dialogues, and everywhere else really on the street. So he was talking about education and how the allocation could help here and there, but is not yet all the way up there to where it needs to be. So we are going to go back to my colleague Priscilla. She is inside, we are preparing for a panel, and she'll be talking to different industry players who are also going to reflect on the budget. Stay with us. I am Viola Sasira. Let's move on to Priscilla.
Examining what government priorities are meaning for the private sector especially, and where the opportunities are lying for both investment and growth, and how manufacturers as well as entrepreneurs can capitalize and position themselves accordingly, whether it is through the policy choices that were announced yesterday, or it could be translating into tangible economic outcomes through the opportunities that are currently lying before them. As we continue this discussion, I do have distinguished panelists with me. Stephen Kaboyo, Founder and Managing Director, Alpha Capital Markets, who is here with us this morning. We also do have Pamela Saka, Tax Partner Manager at Deloitte Uganda, also bringing to the perspective expertise on fiscal policy. And of course, we're also joined by Alan Senyondo, and this is a policy maker with the Uganda Manufacturers Association. Industrialization was one of the priorities that will be focused on in the next financial year. But I do have Stephen here, who needed to make a response to what Pamela had submitted there, in where the opportunities are for oil especially, and also how do we actually restructure our debt, give it some more time so that it reduces the burden and the pressure on the citizens.
Thank you, Priscilla, and thank you, Pamela. I just want to be a little bit less optimistic than my colleague Pamela is, especially on the outlook in terms of the fiscal side of things. One key thing that I think we must tackle is the conversation around debt restructuring. We cannot continue accumulating this level of debt. A day before the budget, the Minister of Finance, the new Minister of Finance, was on the floor of Parliament seeking a supplementary 300 million or so loan for irrigation a day before. So we must look at how we can manage the debt going forward. One key thing that comes from financial market side of things is when you reach a certain level, you must look at how do you restructure what you have. My own duration of the debt we have, so that we ease pressure on the year-to-year budget. Perhaps reduce that 35% to maybe 20 or so. Get the balance to other productive sectors of the economy. So a conversation around debt restructuring, let's go global. Issue a huge international bond, pay off these small fragmented loans, consolidate, and lengthen the maturity so that we can pay debt over a longer period of time, but easing pressure on the short term. So our issue is this short-termism, which builds up, and then we have a problem. The second aspect in in respect of time, is again being less optimistic on the oil. Everybody is talking about oil. All the indicators are we shall get oil. But let's look at the oil proceeds and how they come. It is a gradual process. If we are lucky and there are no production disruptions, which can shift the timeline, like we've seen in the past. So why don't we look at that as well and say, look, if it comes, well and good. If it doesn't come, let's deal with it as we go along. Because even the fraction of what is expected to come is only 1.7 trillion.
So
small fraction.
And that's a futuristic opportunity, a mid-term opportunity. The medium term, let me turn to Alan and manufacturing. I know that industrialization as well as job creation has actually been, and value addition has been part and parcel of the budgets for the last 2-3 years. They are priority areas continuously. But what specific opportunities can manufacturers actually tap out of the incoming budget and the commitments from the government?
Yesterday, before the reading of the budgets, I was quite optimistic. Actually, the manufacturing sector was very optimistic because we thought that with what is happening in the world, the government had taken cognizance, and whatever was going to come out of the speech, out of the budget, would reflect that, so that we can then energize and lift the economy in this turbulent situation. What did we see yesterday is that the opportunities shrunk instead. Why? Because the budget has increased 72 to 84 trillion. Right. That in economics, we have a saying, there is no such thing as free lunch. Money has to come from somewhere to be spent somewhere. So this is what is happening. We are also we are forgetting one thing. On a global scale, I've just made a calculation, 18% right now the farm prices are 18%. Excise duty on a sector which is having about 15,000 people in it. It's going to be a huge shock. And let me add one thing, and that's all in the midst of us talking about our oil. This particular sector is the sector which uptakes derivatives of your oil. We are planning to put up a refinery. We are planning to pump our oil. Who is going to use the oil in the country if we overtax the sector which is supposed to use the derivatives of that particular sector?
So as one that speaks into policy formulation and making, what policy interventions must be considered in order to ease the pressure and the challenges that you've talked about?
The policy interventions have, Stephen has touched something. Our focus should be primarily on growing the economy. So whatever interventions you're putting in place, grow the economy. And we want to reach a 10-fold growth within 13 years. What does it mean? If you're not growing this economy by 12, 13, 14, 15%, you are not going to hit the targets. You are not. So if we are going to have our oil in the short to medium, in the short to medium term, that oil is going to have to replace all the other industrial sector activity at 5%. The question that befalls us, we only hope we won't get the Dutch disease, where we focus on one sector too much and we forget about the whole entire economy. We have to be careful how we do this. Balancing this budget is going to be very crucial going forward, because you are incentivizing the farmers, for example, to produce. Where is the produce going to go? It must go into the industrial sector. If you're not growing the industrial sector, poor farmers, they're going to get stuck with their so much crop. You will have to process it somehow. Then after processing it, you're going to have to focus on exporting it, on consuming that product. So you have to focus both. You have to focus on where to produce and you have to focus on where to sell. The whole entire value chain must be just production, distribution, consumption, and to tie it up is where Stephen falls, financing. You have to tie the whole entire economy together. And if one cog falls out, you're not going to grow the economy. That is where the problem is.
All right, Pamela, Deloitte in advisory capacity. Manufacturers are now feeling the pressure the business community, I'm sure, is also feeling the pressure with the new tax policy that is incoming for them. What are some of the, heaviest, because I know that so many people are doing the mathematics as Alan has been doing yesterday. What is it going to cost us, and what are the adjustments that have to be made? Speaking to some of those things. Beg your pardon? Okay, so the question is about the new tax regime that is incoming and what impact it's going to be having on how businesses are run and how they will be performing.
Thank you very much, Christina. So I agree with you, Alan, and I know that some sectors have been punished. And I think there's a saying, fuel is like the low-hanging fruit. Every year something happens to the fuel prices, and there's a tax added to it. But I want to look at the opportunities, because the acts are here, amendments have come through, they will be signed and assented to by the president. So how do we move forward? Yeah, we see an increment in the threshold for pay-as-you-earn. This is small, but it increases the consumption, which increases purchasing power of our people. So that alone is a shift, not big, but it's a shift in the right direction. We have seen an increase in the VAT threshold, for example, from 150 million to 300. Yeah? And how does that affect people? That means that taxpayers will have more time to focus on the business growth as opposed to focusing on admin costs with VAT compliance. Yeah? So we see that happen. We have also seen the tourism sector being given a credit, for 2 years. Previously it was 6 months for capital expenses. Now we have 2 years. Because we know that government knows that it will not take a very short time for someone to put $5 million, for example. Yeah? We have also seen, we've seen, and for me, the waiver that has been brought up every year, extended every year, is an opportunity for businesses to not focus on the penalties of the past, but to look at the future of their businesses. So we see a few things in the budget that should have been done better. For example, the fuel, the plastics that you mentioned, but from a policy perspective, my thinking is government wants to discourage the use of plastics because of what being an agricultural economy, because of what plastics actually do to our economy. So to the soils and how they affect agriculture, which is the backbone of Uganda. So it's a bit difficult for people who are in a certain sector, but then when you look at the bigger picture, how is it affecting us?
So what changes the environment needs to pay attention to? Especially in terms of compliance.
I didn't speak about yesterday. Absolutely not.
First of all, taxpayers need to do a health check, just to be sure that they do not miss out on this new wave of extension. So health checks will be very important for taxpayers. Then university graduates or young entrepreneurs should take advantage of the 3-year exemption. They should formalize their businesses. We have a very big informal economy, So what government is trying to do is to pull all those people. Where we're feeling a bit of a strain right now is because it's only a few people paying. The biggest part of our economy is not paying taxes. But if we pull them into the bracket, we've seen government insisting on people issuing different invoices. So if you don't formalize your business, then you realize that you will not be able to work with Steven, for example. Because Steven wants a compliant person. So you will run yourself out of business. So those are opportunities, salient, but quite important. So
This new budget comes with
people need to move towards compliance.
What are your expectations?
Whatever that means.
What are your anxieties? What are the solutions this morning? We are going to be speaking about
Close of this discussion, let's take the advisory lane now. Stephen, if you are advising an investor in this room here and today, what are the opportunities that they can benchmark on and say, yeah, this can give us leverage?
And of course, the Ebola phenomenon. Many people have their different dimensions on the Ebola phenomenon, and that has been handled.
When you look at
business, especially tourism.
agro
That is something we want to touch hopefully this morning.
where land comes from.
So it's supposed to be a rich discussion.
Job creation. The issue is
Inclined
how do you
towards
actually link agriculture to industry. That linkage is very key. We must go back, rethink how we talk about adding value. How do we link? I don't see a strong link between agriculture and industry where opportunities can be created. That's one. The other issue which I wanted to bounce back on is what Alan touched on. Going for low-hanging fruits in the tax structure to be able to collect taxes. Today, if you look at all the countries in the globally, everybody is introducing fuel subsidies or they are freezing taxation on fuel because of what we don't know is coming. So why are we so bold to add 200? And for me, I will also declare that somewhere I sit, I deal with oil issues. What we have been trying to advocate for is freeze this tax because we shall pass it on to the customer. And what will that do?
Well, thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you so much, Alan, of course, for speaking into the sectors and speaking into the theme that we have this morning in the ABSA NTV Post-Budget Dialogue 2026, looking at harnessing the opportunities and also navigating the challenges. I'm being joined by Viola as we come to the wrap-up and hand over to the business in the room. Viola?
A very good morning, everyone.
Thank you very much, viewer, for staying with us. I am Viola Ksasiran. We are here at the NTV Uganda ABSA Bank Budget Dialogue. And joining me right now is Mrs. Jane Nalunga, and she's from Siatini, Uganda. So, Jane, thank you so much for making time. My first question would be about Siatini's position on the current 84.3 trillion budget that was read out yesterday. What is the stance for Siatini?
Our stand really is that we welcome the budget because the budget is clear about where government stands when it comes to the drivers of the economy. And government has been really consistent that the ATMS, agro-industrialization, tourism, minerals, science and technology are the drivers of the economy. And when you look at the budget, the government has tried to balance that. I can give an example of agro-industrialization, which has shifted from 1.8 trillion to 2.2 trillion. That's a clear message that government wants to grow the economy. The challenge, but maybe another issue, is the enablers. Government has also tried to ensure that the enablers are also funded, like the human capital development, education, health, water and sanitation, environment. That's also very, very important because the drivers have to go with the enablers, and government has been able to balance that. The biggest challenge is the debt. The loans are too many. And I think for government moving forward, government has to put in place measures to ensure that we address the issue of the indebtedness. Another issue will be implementation. And I think Honorable Musasi brought it out clearly. Implementation is going to be key. Issues of prudent use of the resources, issues of integrity, issues of transparency and accountability, issues of ensuring that money, we get value for money, will be very, very important.
And quickly, before I let you go, are you satisfied with what has been allocated for agro-industrialization? Because I know you were vocal about a particular one.
I would say we it would have been more than that. But when you look at the constraints within the budget, you know, it's enough for today. Maybe in another budget, we expect some more.
Fair enough. Thank you so much, Jane.
Thank you so much, my dear.
Okay. All right. So that is Jane, and we are going to be breaking off for now. We have our Managing Director, NMG Uganda, giving her speech. So let's first go back to her. We shall come back for more interviews here. I am Viola Kusasira.
Is for the ordinary person, omuntu agoyingewa. And yet, even in all this, in true Ugandan culture, we always remain optimistic. We take the word, the Chinese word for challenge, and we turn it into opportunities. What opportunities do we have as Uganda in this fiscal year that is starting July 1? The oil production that we are expecting. For those of us who love sports, AFCON in 2027, there are prospects for investments, prospects for jobs, infrastructure, and private sector participation. So the question before us today is simple. How do we turn this budget into real business confidence, real competitiveness, and real growth? I would like to thank our panelists in advance and everybody who is going to speak on this stage. And my encouragement is that we speak openly, but that we also speak practically. What are the pressure points? How can businesses survive, adapt, and grow? And at this point, allow me to sincerely thank you, PSST, for joining us this morning and for the insights that you're going to share with us today. Once again, thank you, Absa Bank. Thank you, Deloitte, for your continued collaboration in making this platform possible. As NMG, we believe that our role goes beyond reporting the news. Our role includes connecting the dots in a way that will help our country move forward. So once again, thank you all for joining us. I trust we're going to have a fruitful morning. I love this new Kampala Serena setup, and I trust that even in the networking and the collaborating and the sharing of ideas, it's going to be a great morning. So thank you again, and God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Madam Susan Nsibiro. And in the house, we have the PSST, a hand clap for him for gracing this occasion. I'm happy to see you, sir. Every time I see you, numbers pop in my head. It's inevitable, but thank you for coming this morning. Let me now invite the Executive Director for ABSA, Mr. Seguaya, to come and offer his opening remarks this morning. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. The PSST, Dr. Radhaman Ngobi, our partners NTV and Deloitte, distinguished speakers, panelists, our esteemed clients, business associates, the members of the board, ABSA board seated here, the country management committee, our clients, ladies and gentlemen, a good morning. On behalf of ABSA, we are very honored to welcome you yet again for the 5th edition, where we get to dissect the budget. We created this forum to help us unpack the budget figures. We recognize that the budget is just a direction. It is about translating policy into a practical dialogue and what that actually means for our businesses. As we mark this 5th edition, we need to involve ourselves in what the budget means as policymakers, as regulators, as the private sector, the academia, and industrial leaders. The national budget just tells a story. It goes beyond numbers. This forum seeks an opportunity to unlock the challenges that we could confront ahead. It is a conversation where we are renewing our optimism to ensure that the projections that have been highlighted, the oil production, the investment in infrastructure, the productivity, makes sense to our business. As you've all seen, for the first time, we're talking about double digit after a long time. 6% GDP growth to 10.4% in terms of expectation. How do you as a business tap into this? The government is also looking at fiscal consolidation. It is looking at reducing domestic borrowing from 11.4 to 9, such that they lessen the pressure on domestic credit. The success of a budget is measured by the allocation and the implementation into how we develop our infrastructure, how we pay our suppliers, and making our businesses competitive. We need to assess how does this economic growth translate into jobs for our people? How do we support entrepreneurs and SMEs to fully capture the emerging opportunities? How do we strengthen the resilience and competitiveness of our businesses? Government, of course, is a critical part in landing this and providing sound economic policy. As a private sector, we are challenged to invest more and create jobs. We need to be part of this optimism that is coming through. I want to take time to appreciate the Permanent Secretary. He's just told me he's got a very busy morning. Thank you very much for honoring our invitation, Obugalo, to him, and his willingness to engage openly. Thank you very much, our clients and our esteemed panelists, for creating that time to provide that expertise and give perspectives about the budget. We are looking forward to a great engagement. We believe that it will create different voices, different experiences, and expertise to converge and provide that ambition we all hold dear to. With those remarks, it is my great pleasure to formally welcome you and wish you all a productive and insightful discussion as we enhance opportunities and navigate the economic realities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Michael Seguya, for those remarks. As we move on to the next event, next item, I noticed that PSST, sir, I remember that you said this year, and I think it was last year or the other one, we are going to do domestic arrears payment at 1 trillion. I remember that. Now we are at 317, 30%. Maybe we'll talk about that. But now, the PSST has a busy schedule, as you have heard. We want to make the best of him while he's still here. So let's now move on to our fireside chat. And my co-moderator, Simon Kasiate, will handle that. Simon, welcome.
Thank you, Samuel. Forgive my bad manners, but I'll go straight to business. Yesterday afternoon, your boss, Mr. PSST, the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, at Kolo Independence Grounds, did stand and read numbers, trillions and trillions of numbers, percentages, projections, allocations, and some may even argue dislocations. But somewhere in Kamuli, a woman harvesting her maido or groundnuts did not hear a word of it. So did my uncle down in Bugangari, even though he was very busy at the weekly Thursday market in Nyamayenji. But close by in Bwaise, Mr. PSST, a border rider feeling his tank next week will feel something. He will feel it in his pocket and right in situ at the pump station. And that will be the budget speech of yesterday speaking to him. Not in the language of Parliament where you say, Mr. Speaker, sir, but in the language of his daily hustle. And that's, ladies and gentlemen, is precisely why we're here today. My name is Kasiate, Simon Kasiate, and welcome to what I believe is going to be the most consequential conversation that you, elite Ugandans, and those that are not as elite as yourself, will have this year, which is the conversation around the budget of 2026-2027. And today's theme, as you've been told, is harnessing opportunities, navigating economic realities. Now, folks, in this room and watching us wherever it is that you're grabbing this conversation, these 5 words are not just a tagline. They are a challenge. Because this is what they actually mean. They say Uganda's economy is projected to grow at 10.2% next financial year, double-digit growth. And this is something that we've not had as a country since the 1990s. Our exports have more than tripled in the last 5 years. Tourism receipts have exceeded our pre-COVID highs. Kampala startups have attracted double-digit US dollars in investment funding, up from around $4 million US last year. By all means, ladies and gentlemen, you can comfortably say Uganda is on the move. And yet, the pay-as-you-earn threshold has been risen by 100,000 Ugandan shillings a month. Fuel, like I told you earlier on, has gone up. Sugar, cooking oil, cement, and yes, alcoholic beverages have also had their hit upwards. A budget of 84.39 trillion has been approved, and the honest question every Ugandan, including yourself, is asking, from this executive room to the markets to the fields, is, will any of this actually reach me? Now, ladies and gentlemen, to help us answer that question, ABSA and NTV Uganda have assembled an incredible panel. Frankly speaking, this panel is unmatched. But first, how about we first have a fireside conversation with the architect of this fiscal vision in the name and body of Mr. Ramadan Gobi, the Permanent Secretary and Secretary to the Treasury at the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. With a lot of humility, sir, allow me to invite you to take the podium. Yes, I'll sit right next to you. Great. Ladies and gentlemen, this man doesn't deserve any further introduction. But for those who love cracking a joke or two, you can comfortably say he's a man famed for having said, economics that works. And so this morning, the Daily Monitor headlines with an interesting catchword: the budget that gives and the budget that takes. And as you know that famous song, blessed is the hand that giveth and the one that taketh. Gladly we have the man that giveth and taketh. Mr. Gobi, let's start from there. Double-digit growth, 83 point something trillion over budget. But yet when I check my pocket right now, that doesn't seem to be the reality I'm facing. What can you broadly, as we start our conversation, tell us about the budget as read yesterday?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, to greet all of the many friends I see in this room from across every, I think, strand of life, from private sector, from civil society, the academia, my colleagues in the government, and everybody. I greet all of you. Of course, the budget gives and it takes. Every single budget, except a wedding one maybe, because the national budget has to get revenue so that it can distribute it. I think we have this bias in Uganda that a budget has to only give. But government does not have any other source of money apart from the source of domestic revenue mobilization, which is taxation. They tax all of us. We tax ourselves and get the revenue, and then we distribute. The budget, I think you should agree, this is a good budget. It's a good big budget with so many opportunities you are harnessing. The revenue is growing, and that is good. Of course, with some pinch on us. Some of the sources of revenue are not very popular, but inevitable, because they are the main strands of economic activity that we have in the country that we should tax. So we hope to get about 45 trillion shillings of our own to finance a discretionary budget of about 57 trillion. Actually, the actual budget is not 84 trillion. It's just because the law requires us to compile all of those numbers. We call them memo items, debt rollover. We are not going to get money to spend on it, no. It means postponing debt which has kind of reached the expiry date. Kashiate gave us money about 10 years ago by buying a treasury bond. Kashiate wants his money back after the 10 years we have been giving him interest. Now he wants his principal. So I get the money from Julius and I give it to Kashiate, and everything is okay. We roll over the debt for the future. So there's nothing like you've increased the borrowing because of the refinancing. It is a economic engineering, or rather financial, not economic, financial engineering, but they are asking us to report it in the budget, the law, and we report it. In the past, we were not. That's why the budget was very small. But from the year 2015, we have been reporting that in the budget. Then we have other numbers we have to report in the schedule, which we include in the budget, like the central bank repayment. These are papers we issued to the central bank at ago. You remember we told you about 2 years ago that government has committed to repay all the central bank, the 7.7 trillion shillings that we owed them. And we issued them a bill, a treasury bonds And every year they go on now like redeeming part of that bond. So next year they will redeem about 557 billion shillings, and we report it. But it's not money we are going to first earn and then pay. No. We already gave them the paper. They sort out themselves. So what we call the discretionary budget, and I think I should give you those numbers to put this conversation in context, is actually far less than that. And that is the 57 trillion shillings. Now, of that, 95% of the money, we are going to spend it on either the ATMs or the enablers. 95%. Only 5%.
Let's just maybe be very clear. The ATMs or at the ATM? I mean, Absa is here, so...
Absa shouldn't be excited that we are going at the ATM. We are talking of the ATMs in the form of agro-industrialization, tourism, mineral beneficiation, and science, technology, and innovation.
You've heard it.
That's
ATMs.
where we are spending something like 8 trillion, and then the rest of the money out of the 57 trillion is spent on the enablers. That is infrastructure, making roads, electricity, irrigation, industrial parks, getting all the things which will facilitate those 4 drivers of growth to work. So, and the main question people usually ask, so what is new? And I will end with that. What is new is that government is committed to implementing certain things, painful things, so that we are able to achieve the things we are talking about. The first one is budget discipline and accountability. The way we spend this money in those various sectors, fine, you have put it there, but how do we ensure that this money is not involved in buying certain things which are not adding value?
E.g.?
You know them. You know
motor
them.
vehicles, pickups.
As Ugandans. So, these are the kind of conversations we should have. And in the government, we have at least in the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, and we've gotten a good commitment from His Excellency the President and the Cabinet. That's the right thing to do. We are going to rediscipline ourselves, then to discipline the government in terms of budgeting. How do we budget? They are what we call budget games, where institutions can put money in certain items that on paper look very serious, but beneath them, this money is going to be spent on things which are not very important. In the national budget, for example, you could find something like 25 billion shillings for public functions, to have parties and drive around the country, that now let's have Labor Day in Katakwi. And we all drive to Katakwi. So many cars. Now, these cars consume fuel, people are there. Okay, the people of Katakwi have seen you as government people, but there's not much value addition. And the roads are bad in Katakwi. So we are saying, let's say, get some of this money and put it there. Then you'll find a lot of money hidden in the form of allowances, consultancies, the government entity. You find an entity which is staffed with engineers, but is hiring engineers to design something. And those engineers perhaps are the ones who own the other firm that designs that wins the consultancy. We are looking at all that, and we see how we could do. And we have done that in this budget. If you go on and you look at the details, you will see that the number of things which we've done in there. And now and my minister told you yesterday, each of the accounting officers is going to sign on a budget discipline and accountability charter going forward, which has 5 rules on the commitment of government when you don't have money, so that this business, I heard somebody talking over arrears. Arrears arise from indiscipline, because government has never failed to have money to pay as long as it is in the budget. But sometimes we are committing without money. Then we are going to discipline people on procurement, discipline people on supplementary budgets, discipline people on implementation of projects. And this, for example, counterpart funding diverted to those other things, and you cause a very important project to delay, to stall, and so on and so forth. So the charter, you will see, definitely. We are all Ugandans, and we are very committed to that. Now, the second reform is on the procurement itself. We are going to reform our procurement system. I know some of the people in the room are procurement experts. Procurement is a profession. I think it is the only profession in Uganda which has been invaded by so many people who are not professionals. Everybody is procuring or is participating in procurement.
You haven't checked with journalism, but let's proceed.
So in the government, you'll find there are 2 committees that sit. One is called Contracts Committee. So many people there, they have no idea about procurement. But they are heads of departments, they are. Then Evaluation Committee, that they evaluate bids and so on. They come and sit in a hotel room like this one, and sometimes they call the prospective sellers. The conversation in there, you and I can guess. Now, we want to get out those people who are not procurement professionals from the procurement chain. And we leave the procurement professionals to get the backer stopping with them. The accounting officer and the PDU are going to be the ones to go to Luzira when they fail to do the right thing. But these days, it is very difficult to know who should be taken to Luzira, because there are so many people. And apart from that, there is a lot of delay. You are buying space in Serena, and it takes time to get this space because people are bidding, and there are so many processes. The lead time is so long. They even have waiting time. That after everything has been done, now let us wait for 30 days for someone to complain. If there is nobody complaining, they solicit for one to complain. So the parliamentarians did not do us a very good job in the past by making these kind of laws. So we need to change them. It's a reform which we are bringing. There is another reform on trade order, enforcement of trade order, ensuring that we get some orderly way of doing business in Uganda. This tendency of everybody saying I'm an orphan, I'm a widow, so I should settle in the middle of the road. I should make a noise because I'm looking for money, walking around with some loudspeaker. That business is not good, and it's actually affecting our ability to grow and attract serious investors. So we are going to inconvenience people going forward. You had the president committing, and it is very good that the political leadership led by His Excellency the President have committed that this is the only way forward. So we expect private sector, Foundation Uganda and other of the likes, not to tell us that, you see, our people are now very broke, please help us, leave them in the roadside. No, let's get organized. We are also going to re-engineer the way we manage our state-owned enterprises so that there is value creation, there is good corporate governance and oversight, and there is accountability. We have a challenge with our public enterprises. I think you have been hearing a lot of things going on, and some people think that's the best way we can do. No. We need to get these state-owned enterprises in energy, in finance, in water, in everywhere, a whole spectrum. We have over 77 enterprises. But the way we are managing, many of you don't know even their budgets. Some of them have started even to do CSR on government. They come to help government. It's incredible. It's an abuse that let's help government to put some of this item here and there. That's not how we should do business in the government. We are going to reform them. But most importantly, we are going to improve on implementation, discipline, execution discipline. And here we are going to the disease. The disease is the way, for example, we budget for counterpart funding. We had left it on the discretion of the implementing entity. But counterpart funding is almost like a debt because you have committed in a financing agreement that you are going to purchase land right of way for this project to be implemented. But we haven't been very keen. So some of the entities would get the money because you see the way we budget, we give a kitty to the entity and then it prioritizes. Sometimes their priorities would be other things. So Simon, I could go on and on, but I thought that would be the main gist I should give you. We are going back on the reform agenda. We are going back on ensuring that we execute what we have committed in the budget and other plans. And the growth will continue. The economy is doing well at a macro level. It's only someone who's not actually very honest and good-willing who can say that. What do you see about inflation, about the exchange rate, about availability of the foreign exchange in the country, about the growth of economic activity itself? Uganda is a beehive of these activities. Ugandans, for example, abroad, those Ugandans abroad, this last year, no, up to around March, the 12 months to March, they have sent home 2.8 billion shilling. I mean $billion. $2.8 billion.
Wow.
This is amazing. These are our relatives who are sweeping out there. They have decided to bring all their money home. That's a vote of confidence in the economy. And We are no longer relying on foreign direct investors only and portfolio investors of His Excellency, whom he likes
Kavoy.
to. His Excellency Kavoy analyzes some of these portfolio investments very well. Sir, Ugandans have now toppled the portfolio flows. They are now number 2 after FDI in bringing in these dollars we are using. That's a vote of confidence. In an election year, people bring money home. So we want that macro picture to come down now to the microeconomics.
Tremendous.
And these are the reforms which we need to use to get that. I thank you.
Mr. PSST, first hold the thanks, which I appreciate.
I want to
in
run
advance. I know you have to run away. In fact, I just received the note here. I think it's a communication from the presidency that your minister needs you. But the same note also requested that I ask you one small little question before you leave. You had mentioned earlier on that Ugandans keep asking, but what's new with this budget? The president said now 67% of Ugandans are in the money economy, and his fight in this Kisanja is to ensure that the remaining 33% get into the money economy. But folks in this room continue to argue that year in, year out, you target to tax more the same people you have been taxing. Never mind that the people getting into the money economy are increasing in number. You don't seem to reach out to the nooks and corners. That's a question I could have asked URA, but normally when we ask URA, they say it's Mr. Gobi who advises us on new taxing you who are in the formal economy. So answer that one quickly, then we can see you outside.
Domestic revenue mobilization. It's good you have reminded me that. We are going to start implementing our DRMS2 beginning this coming financial year. The key reforms in it are in tax policy, the policy area. And I think we shall have a discussion on the tax policy. We are going to have it as a country. All these things also I've mentioned, like a trade order and so on, they actually border to that. Because some people say the reason why we can't get revenue and we go back to the same person, Professor Sejaka, for more revenue is because the rest of the people are informal. You know, now we have the evidence that much of the informality is actually in the formal sector.
I like that.
That is a very big controversy. The informality we have in Uganda is in the formal sector, which means that it's not actually informality, it is tax evasion. We are bringing reforms which are going to ensure that we tackle that. In our DRMS too, I don't want to go into too much detail today, but I want to assure you, Simon, and everybody in this room, that Uganda is going to change. Of course, it's not going to be a sprint, it's going to be a marathon, but the beginning is this coming financial year. In terms of the way we report, the way we do business, the way we account, and because we have been so much into URA, please collect more revenue. But URA, when you give them a target, they will go for those who are already on their register. We want to help URA with the whole of government approach to broaden the net such that all of us can pay some little money and we end up all of us paying something. That's the whole essence of these things like a trade order and the other reforms which we are targeting in our DRMS 2. Let's have that conversation on another day because it is a broader one and it requires everybody's involvement. Civil society, we are working with them, the private sector units and the government and development partners. We have done a lot of work, analytical work with the IMF We have done a lot of work with the Siatini, and the Siatini is a civil society organization, but we are working with everybody to ensure that we can see how we can get this done.
Absa, I think you have heard that the next time this conversation will be broadened should be over a coffee, so you should now ready yourself, sponsor, grab a coffee, and I'm sure Susan here will be more than glad to host it. That said, Mr. Ramadan Gobi, we can't thank you more for taking time off your very busy schedule to come and have this candid conversation with us. We will allow and in show of respect and acknowledgement of your time well spent with us, stand up and guide you out to go and attend to more pressing national issues as we continue with our conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
Let's
much.
raise up and wish him well.
Thank you very much, PSST. Somebody whispered to me that you might come back after your meeting. It will be nice to have you, sir, back because the proceedings here are going to be very interesting. As the PSST leaves, thank you all. You can have your seats. Let's invite, let me just check my program here. Let's invite Ms. Patronella Namubiru from Deloitte to take us through a short presentation that encompasses the thoughts we had in terms of the direction of this morning's discussion. Welcome.
So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Are we excited for today? I hope so. So our distinguished guests, valued clients, our partners, NTV and ABSA, I would like to extend a hearty good morning to all of you. And in absentia, I want to say thank you to the PSST for taking time out this morning to be with us, and kick us off in terms of the discussion. As we are here today, so for those watching and those in the room, the discussion today is about clarity. I'm happy to say that right now we are not going to discuss the numbers. The PSST has gone through those. We all had the budget. We've read about the budget, the allocations, all those things. The presentation I will make is putting things into perspective. When Simon was having the fireside chat with the PSST, he was asking what are the Ugandans, for the Ugandan who's going to fuel and sees the pump price, that's the budget for them. So the discussion this morning will focus on what we need to think about, not the numbers, but the aspects that are going to hit us, and hopefully what government and policy makers will be focusing on for our benefit. Let me just make sure that the technology is working. Very good. Okay. So I'm not going to go through the budget overview. The PSST has done that. But what I will start with and has been focused on is the financing for the budget. Okay. So the financing for the budget is largely moving so that domestic revenue is the main focus, which means for everyday Ugandan, you will feel it in your pocket. Things will change, okay? And the challenges that are faced with domestic revenue mobilization are that, it's still, our tax to GDP ratio is still quite low, although that has been increasing. It's projected that will end at 13.9%, and the government's ambition is that eventually, and very soon, by 2030, we should be at 20% tax to GDP ratio. So there's quite an ambition there, and there are things that need to be done. And for that to happen, that means things have to change. So for the ordinary Ugandan, more is to come. The PSSC has told us that we don't have a large informal sector. What we do have is a formal sector that's just not meeting its tax obligations, okay? So we have tax evasion. That's what the PSSC has told us, and which therefore means URA is also going to act accordingly to try and uncover, to try and seek out all those people who have been hiding behind, you know, the informal sector argument. So, taxation. Because that's where the money is going to come from. Government has to spend, money has to come from somewhere. Now, the issue of taxation and why we say carrot or stick, okay? For government to implement, it has to have money from somewhere. And that money comes from every person who is in Uganda, every taxpayer, every individual is meant to contribute to that. So taxation is very much a social contract. So you agree with government that as Ugandans, as people who are living in Uganda, as people who are doing business in Uganda, you do the business, you make the money, you give some of that money to government, and then government provides you with services. Government implements, you know, development initiatives that grow the economy. That's the social contract. Right now, I will say that the social contract is very much one-sided, or at least as Ugandans, we feel like government has not met its side of the bargain, okay? So that's where the stick comes from. So there's no carrot as we speak. Even within Parliament itself, there's been, you know, wide discussion with the question of why are there new taxes that are coming? Ugandans already feel overburdened. We need to do something different. So as a snapshot, this is what, you know, the projections are, and you can see domestic revenue will contribute 52.3% to the revenue government expects to get and be able to fund. I mentioned our tax to GDP ratio, so that's about 13.9%. The World Bank usually recommends that you should have a tax for purposes of moving a country out of low income status. And I think the president has been very clear that Uganda has to be middle income status. I think a year or so ago, he had indicated that we had reached that. The World Bank does indicate that for any country to move out of low income status, it has to have a tax to GDP ratio of more than 15%. Currently, we are averaging at about 13.9%. So we have ways to go. The government plan is to make sure that every year there's an incremental of about 0.5, okay? So that eventually, come 2030, and how far is 2030? It's not very far now. We will be at 20%. So what does that mean? From a taxation perspective, okay? You've all seen some of the taxes, they've been mentioned. Increase in excise duty. Yes, excise duty on fuel is going up by about 200 shillings. I think this morning, depending on the pump price, in different places, it's about 6,000, some places it's 6,530 or thereabout. So that means come 1st July, and with the world, you know, the volatility in this market being what it is, that price will most likely have gone up by the time the month ends. So just add 200 shillings to that, okay? So come 1st July, there's an additional 200 shillings on your diesel, on your petrol, because that's a measure that the government is looking at to increase taxes. So a lot of what government does is to tap into the indirect taxes. You know, when you're paying the money, if you tell someone, go to the bank and pay tax, they are more likely to not do that. They'll receive the money and not come back. If, on the other hand, you have no choice in paying that amount, so you have to drive your car, you go to the fuel pump, You fuel and you pay the tax, it's much easier. There's been talk of broadening the tax base. That's something we are yet to see. It's a work in progress. And then the driving of compliance. I think this morning when the PSST was talking about not having an informal sector, but tax evasion, in their view, this is where this is going to come from. A number of people in this room have either been audited, are undergoing an audit, have been requested for information so that an audit starts. And then at an individual level, you also have people who are receiving letters or emails from the URA saying, we saw you sold land. You haven't paid your stamp duty, you haven't paid your capital gains tax, come to our office and make sure that is paid. There were people in the diaspora who are calling and saying, what are these emails URA is sending? That we have assets and we need to declare them. But this is where that falls. So from a URA perspective and from a government perspective, this is where, that's the area where the tax is going to be increased. So it's a focus on compliance, it's a focus on transparency, so digitalization of everything. IFRIS, 2-3 years ago, there was a lot of upheaval about IFRIS. People have settled into it, they've accepted it. But there are a lot more things that will come to create transparency, to move that informal sector or tax evasive formal sector into the tax-paying economy. Okay? So that's on the one front, how the revenues are to be funded. Then in the next budget, part of what will come online and what we expect is first oil. So there's an expectation that there's going to be revenue coming from petroleum. Okay? And we've all been excited and waiting for this. And with everything that's happening globally, most people are saying finally our oil will come online and we don't have to suffer with the prices. All will be well. Government gave the assurance earlier this year that for sure, first oil will come by July. So we'll wait and see. July is only a few weeks away. So let's see if that actually, happens. So a lot has happened in the oil and gas space. Most of the projects are between 60 to 80% completion. The allocation of the budgets have clearly also focused on this sector in ensuring that we do get to that first oil. So what's the reality? Okay, so first oil has come. So come FY26, FY27, we actually have production. But the global reality has to be considered. Okay, Uganda is a late entrant into this space. That's so in terms of competition of pricing, in terms of, we even have emerging producers already. So there's competition around that. So we need to see how we are going to come into this space and be a producer that is reaping the benefits of what we have, we've projected ourselves to reap. Then, of course, you have timely completion of the projects. So like I said, we've been promised first oil by July. Let's see how quickly that comes online. Let's see how quickly ECOP comes online. So there are a couple of things that need to be considered before we actually say we are now exporting, we are now getting revenues out of the production of oil. In the midst of all that, we still have the geopolitics. Every time you turn on the news, at least international news, Ugandans have moved on. Our news has other things. But if you turn on the international news, every morning there's a news item about what US has done, what Iran has done. That's occupying the international scene. But that has had such a ripple effect in a very short period of time. Sometimes months are not that long, but if you consider March to now, a lot has happened and has impacted us on the basis of the US-Israel-Iran war. Not, of course, so oil is the obvious one. Most people are very clear on that. But the one we haven't considered, okay? So the oil prices, everyone looks at that and they're like, yes, the Iran war is here. it's happening to us. A lot of times, sometimes Ugandans don't think that the things that happen outside Uganda don't impact them. But now, looking at the palm price, we know that war has impacted us. For those who travel, who fly to places, and again, the ordinary Ugandan may say those are for rich people, which may be true or not, I don't know. But what you're also forgetting is that, and again, PSST talked about the diaspora remittances. So those people are being affected by when jet fuel goes up, which means airlines increase their ticket prices. So there's an impact there. But I think something that we need to consider as Ugandans, which we haven't thought about this war, is fertilizer. We import the bulk of our fertilizer. Okay? And unfortunately, because of this current war, fertilizer prices are expected to also go up. Okay? So this is just a quick snapshot of where we import fertilizers from. It's mainly from Kenya, but Saudi Arabia was something that was, how much we import from Saudi Arabia was quickly growing. But the cost of fertilizer as an agricultural country is something that will hit us. So most people may not be feeling it now, but that will also come in. Okay? Those are the planting seasons, just to give you, and this is for food crops, so it's not necessarily for cash crops, but this just gives you an indication of when usually fertilizer becomes necessary. Okay? Diaspora remittances, the PSST talked about that. BOU earlier indicated that there could be an impact on that. Remittances, especially from people working in the Middle East, could go down, and yet this has now become number 2, from what you've heard, in terms of contributor of Forex. That's where we are at right now. Our trade deficit, I won't go into that. And then, so aside, when we move away from the geopolitical, we also, what's our discussion right now? Ebola. Ebola is a discussion. For people in this room, people in Kampala, they are like, Ebola is not real. Unfortunately, the world thinks otherwise. Okay? So while in Uganda we may not think that Ebola is something that is here, the rest of the world, I don't know if you saw those initial reports when they were reporting about Ebola and said there are about 800 cases in DRC and Uganda. You see, there was that, and it scared the world because they thought, oh my God, 800 cases. How many confirmed deaths? And this is happening in DRC and Uganda. So there was always that linkage. Now they've stopped reporting like that, but the damage is done. And unfortunately, for us, the effect has, travel advisories. So Ugandans, if you're here in Uganda, you can't go to the US, you can't go to Canada. There are certain countries in Asia where you can't go. For business people, that has an impact, okay? We've talked about diaspora people. Some people got stuck here. So suddenly you're losing income. So those contributions, again, are being affected. And again, some people may say, when flights KLM stops coming, that's a rich people problem. When people stop getting visas to UAE, again, that's a rich people problem. That's not our problem. There are a lot of people who work in the Middle East, okay? People who are looking for a better future. So that means if they are not getting visas, they are not going. That means everyone, again, ripple effect on the same. Okay? We've also had disruptions at the border. We close our border with DRC, and we trade quite a lot with DRC. So trade disruptions as a result of that. But perhaps the most obvious and hardest hit sector is tourism. So summer, what they call summer, is usually the peak of the tourism sector. And that's between June and August. So right now, if tourists can't come to Uganda because flights are not coming to Uganda, or they've been told if you go to Uganda, you can't come back to your country. Or when you come back, you go quarantine for 21 days or 30 days, then it makes people think twice about coming here, okay? The tourism sector is still optimistic. The tourism board has been assuring people that Uganda is safe. But again, unfortunately, because of some of the actions that have been taken, there is going to be a hit on that. Okay, so maybe last but not least is trying to wrap this up and say, with all these things that are happening, we now have a new government. So we have a new cabinet. Okay, some of the faces may still be familiar, but they've moved them across, to different ministries, okay? So, and then we have a parliament. Again, you may say most of the faces are familiar, but they need to settle in first. What does that mean? When you have a very ambitious budget that needs to be, implemented, and you have people who need to settle in. These are some of the challenges, okay, that the new government has to grapple with and deal with. So the very last word on this, and I guess rightfully so, we should take a quote from the PSST. It's about internal fiscal discipline. The PSST has talked quite extensively as to what measures the government is planning to put in place in this financial year with regard to, government expenditure. But what do they say? The proof of the pudding is in the testing, okay? Your mother's cooking is good when you go outside and test other people's cooking. So in this case, we'll wait to see what happens, but internal fiscal discipline is going to be quite critical. The other thing that we need to harness are the regional, collaborations. Whether it's the East African community, yes, we fight every so often, and there are manufacturers in the room, but there is also the African Continental Free Trade Area. This is something that is being, encouraged, and there's a lot that's being done to try and bring Africa on board. But can you imagine, the resources Africa has, and if we are able to trade with each other, internally, we would actually have been able to absorb some of the shocks that are coming and the geopolitics that we are talking about better if we were working together as an African bloc. So this is something to consider. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We will now move into the panel discussions. I hope I've given you food for thought this morning, something to think about outside of what the numbers actually are.
That wasn't a big enough hand clap for her. Thank you so much, Petronella, for that. And you saw there were a lot of numbers, but she was trying to go for brevity. Now we got the issue. We do business, we who are here, and it's going to be business talk regardless if it is the budget. Let me invite my co-moderator, Simon, and we're going to move now into the panel, and we're going to discuss business with the budget in the background. Simon.
Thank you very much, Samuel. And yes, back to business indeed, without a doubt. And you are such an incredible audience. And I hope that your colors won't change as soon as we begin the next part of our conversation, because now the next part is going to be highly interactive, but that could also mean highly disruptive. So let's choose which side of the coin we want to be in. And if you ask me, I would humbly suggest that we choose the part of interactive, which means conversations here and there, as opposed to disruptive, which is conversations down there. Now, all of you in your respective capacities, because when I look across the room, I see very important people in your many respective capacities, both state and non-state actors. Allow me add my voice in welcoming you and thanking you for keeping it with us. Let no one lie to you. We are not about to end this conversation, at least this morning. We are here until the early part of the afternoon. So tell whoever it is that's waiting for you that you're going to be here for the long haul. Why? Because the conversation is too serious a conversation for us to abandon it midway. And to do so would mean we don't take it as seriously as we should. And so without further ado, having had the first fireside conversation, which was, I must admit, a bit of fire, let me now have a panel discussion with, and in no particular order of importance, but I will allow you to join me in welcoming the following distinguished people. Susan Nsibirwa, the Managing Director, NMG Uganda. I know you look surprised, but somehow it's important for you to come and face the same fire that you and ABSA organized to put together. Thank you, Susan. Even more surprising will be the questions that have been prepared for you. And Dr. Professor, every title applies, but yes, Samuel Sejaka, without a doubt, one of the most astute economic brains we have in this country. Welcome, sir. Take your pick. Just make sure any seat, as long as not the one which Susan is seated on. And my good friend, Damali Sali. And all of you know Damali Sali, another incredible brain. For those who saw the poster, yes, these things change and starts with the hair. She had blonde hair on the poster, and now it's dark and beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, I spared this last panelist for a purpose. Two things in life are for sure: death and taxes. But in this particular guest, they seem to be responsible for both. But let's start with their former job, which is taxation. So, did I see Dennis Kugonza from Uganda Revenue Authority or their representative? Aha! From Uganda Revenue Authority, let's welcome this gentleman and say thank you. I surprised Susan by inviting her first, and clearly she will feel even more uncomfortable if I don't allow her partner in crime to also join the panel. And the crime is putting this together. NMG and ABSA are the partners in this crime. So allow me, in a very special way, invite our partner, Michael Seguaya from ABSA, to come and take their seat. You will forgive my bad manners that I'm going to moderate this while standing. Please don't get the temptation of looking at me. Let's look at the audience, because I'm not that very important where we're headed to. Now, folks, we just had the PSST setting the stage. But many of us may have had more questions than what we believed could have come from him. And let me, from the PSST, try to go a little bit academic before we bring it down to ordinary conversation. I'll start with you, Professor Sejaka. We'll start from the question that talks about, is it deepening or widening? It depends on how you like to look at these words, but yes, the tax base ought to be widened. And the PSST made a very important point, because we've always argued that they tend to deepen their taxation to a small group of people in the formal sector. The PSST says, make no mistake, much of the informality is actually in the formal sector. And it's not done by accident, it's done by design, and that design has a name. And the name is tax evasion. Do you believe him? Let's start from there, Professor Sejaka.
Hello, can you hear me? Good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, it is a pleasure for me to be here. I want to thank ABSA for inviting me again. and NTV and NMG for having me back. I thought they had completely gotten rid of me. I used to be Susan's boss, but I had retired. But thank you for having me back. Now, it is interesting that the PSST has talked about domestic revenue mobilization strategy too. And I have not had a chance to personally look at it. But as far as I am concerned, the whole issue of domestic revenue mobilization has been about deepening rather than widening. Because I do not know how people in the informal sector pay taxes rather than through consumption of goods and services. When you talk about registering taxpayers, as was the case in the first strategy, it was about having more people registered. And that was in urban areas. But I do not know, Gary is here, I will speak to it. I do not know how much more tax they were able to pay. But for me, certainly, as a large taxpayer, I think I am paying more. So that is, for me, based on my experience, deepening. Simon, I don't know how much the cattle farmer from your village pays in taxes, but he sits outside the revenue system. I do not know how much the coffee farmer in Masaka pays in taxes, but he or she is outside that revenue mobilization system, except to the extent that they consume goods. And I think one of the things that we have seen in terms of the budget is the increase in those indirect taxes. So we shall see an increase in indirect taxes. Now, I do not also want to deal with the numbers. I want to deal with the principles. And the first principle, I don't know who is here from the Ministry of Finance, but the first principle is who allocates better? Is it the private sector or the public sector? And evidently, we know that the private sector allocates better. But we must have taxes collected. So I don't want to be misunderstood. But again, we also know that no country ever lifted itself out of poverty by increasing taxes. I do not see myself becoming a minister of finance because now I see it is my students who are becoming ministers. So the new minister is my former student. So the bus has gone for me. So, but if I were the minister, the key question for me would be, how do I put more money in the pockets of people so that they consume more?
Tremendous.
And I think for any of us who is not a planned kid and has a relationship with the village, the numbers do not transform into the reality in the village. Definitely there has been improvement over the last 40 years, but there is still a long way to go. So to answer your question specifically, I want to think that we are talking more of deepening than widening. So these taxes that you see are going to come back again to haunt the people in the formal sector. So I was rather surprised by the PSST's comment that the informality is in the formal sector. I wish we could have more explanation on that.
He will return certainly at some point. And thank you very much, Professor Sejaka, for that insight. I don't know, you clearly have given up all hope of being a minister, considering that your students are now ministers. I don't know what I should say since my teacher is the PSST. Maybe then I can have hope of being the president of my local Rotary Club. Still talking about taxation, I'll turn to the representative from Uganda Revenue Authority. His name is Gary Kizito, and he's the Assistant Commissioner for Compliance Management in the Domestic Taxes Department. I think let's give him a hand clap. His question, I made sure I write it, just in case. And so I will read it verbatim. So, Mr. Kizito, the border rider, the market vendor, the young teacher, and the small business owner all have one question for you this morning. They're being asked to pay more. More excise duty on fuel. Sugar has been taxed at double the rate. Motorcycle registration costs have now jumped from 200,000 to 500,000. And they are asking, what is the explicit, measurable promise of what they will get in return? And how will ordinary Ugandans know whether URA and government have kept that promise by the end of the next financial year? In other words, I'm simply saying, all of you claim you would want to pay taxes in Uganda. No one hates to pay taxes, right? You all claim you want to pay taxes. But the reason you don't pay the taxes, at least willingly, is that you don't see anything in return. No social services to talk about, no good infrastructure which pound your beautiful cars. So why should you pay?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Good morning, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I would also take this opportunity to thank NMG, ABSA, and Deloitte for this breakfast. Very important to discuss issues arising out of the budget. My name is Gary Kizito, representing the Commissioner, Domestic Taxes, Mr. Dennis Kugonza, who has not been able to make it due to other pressing areas. And I also bring you greetings from the Commissioner General, Mr. John Musinguzi, and the entire management of URA. About the question, what should a Ugandan expect in return for the increment in the various areas of tax? Professor Sejaka is my teacher as well. And the first thing he taught me is that tax is non quid pro quo. that you pay tax without necessarily expecting direct return. Right? However, like the PSST explained, taxation is a source of revenue for government. And also Patronella also brought it very well. Government has a duty to provide public services and can only do that through mobilizing revenue, and taxation is one of the key sources of revenue. So as Ugandans, it's our social responsibility to pay taxes, and I want to actually take this opportunity to thank those who have actually done their duty of paying tax compliantly and voluntarily. There are actually quite many who pay their taxes voluntarily, and a few who we have to run after. So, when this tax is paid, the expectation is that government provides the social resources and services through making roads, transport areas, schools. We have UPE, we have USE, university, medical services, and very many others, security, and so many others. So, it's our duty, and like again it has been put, our economy, our country cannot develop, cannot move out of low income to middle income status unless we make a contribution and actually government spends the resources. PSST has also made at a certain time to emphasize the issue of accountability and discipline on the side of the expenditure. We, on the side of revenue collection, tend to have very difficult conversations with some of our taxpayers resulting from the discipline of the expenditure side. And I'm happy to know that the PSST has made this a priority of government this coming financial year, to have discipline in the resource utilization and expenditure side. Because many of our taxpayers, the question will ask us is, but what is my money going to do? You're asking for the money, but see how it's being spent. So once government put emphasis on the side of expenditure, discipline and accountability, Ugandans are much more willing actually to contribute even more. They wouldn't mind the increase in taxes. They wouldn't actually mind making a fair contribution of their share. But actually, the challenge always on the expenditure side. And once government has decided to look at that area, we believe Ugandans will receive in return for their taxes very good and high quality social services. Thank you very much.
Gary, thank you very much. I think you allay our fears that indeed you're committed to using our taxes in the best way we possibly all can benefit. We'll hold you to your word. Folks, the Daily Monitor this morning headlines and describes this budget in the most succinct manner anyone can. They call it the budget that gives and the budget that takes. Damali, where does this budget stand? On which side does the scale flip? On the part of giving or on the part of taking? What do you think should have been given more and what less do you think should have been taken away? Broadly speaking, from your experience, having been an astute economics and financial person, but also now someone who is into an extremely interesting field of nutrition in a room where people have all had their breakfast. Over to you, Damali.
Thank you. I am happy about the question. And good morning to everyone. I want to start off by thanking ABSA, NTV, and Deloitte for this annual conversation about the budget, which is very important. Regarding what has been taken, what could have been given, maybe let me start off even from the tax question. What has been taken, if you look at the tax measures, where we are increasing taxes on cooking oil, on sugar, on fuel, these particular taxes disproportionately affect the poorer households because the poor households, a large part of their income is actually spent on these items. So we've taken from them. And the total value of these tax measures is going to bring in about 1.7 trillion. That's on one hand. On the other hand, the budget has given tax exemptions to rich corporations of about 2.7 trillion. So in a way, we've taken from the poor and exempted the rich. I would have reversed that, actually. I wouldn't maybe have increased tax measures on basic items like cooking oil, like fuel, because they affect the poorest of the poor. But I would have reduced the tax exemptions, ensured that the rich corporations that were giving tax exemptions are really complying with those. We should be monitoring them, we should be supervising them. They should be worth that for us to be giving away basically 2.7 trillion in tax exemptions. So I would have reversed that if I was, give and take. If I was good, I would do that.
Damali, just sorry to interject, but until a few months ago, it would have been taboo for me to make mention of even what's been quoted in the budget speech. For example, there is an income tax exemption on Bujagali Energy Limited till 2032. Now, I would not have said that until recently when NMG and Bujagali stopped having the same owner, but now I can say it for purposes of furthering candid conversation. Not so, Susan. So you can imagine Bujagali Energy, one of the most, profitable industries, is given a tax holiday, and the mama chapati, the cooking oil goes up double. Your border guy. You're right, Damali, but try to be succinct. Don't speak in passive voice. We know you to be candid. Hit it hard. That's why you're here.
Right. The other area that I found a bit concerning maybe would be on the domestic tax areas, which basically mean the government owes the private sector. So the value is about 10 trillion. So government owes the private sector 10 trillion. The private sector has delivered these goods and services to the government. The government hasn't paid them back, 10 trillion. Wow. So what the government is then planning to pay in the budget is about 200 billion of the 10 trillion. That, if we continue to pay that amount, it could take the government like 50 years to pay off the 10 trillion, ignoring the additions. And yet, so I would have prioritized paying down these domestic areas to the private sector, because it means that I pay them what I owe them as a government. the private sector goes, employs more people, sells more things, I tax them more. It's self-reinforcing in a positive way. So rather than tax exemptions, rather than large public expenditure, I would have actually paid off the private sector debt.
Great, that's Damali for you. Now, I've also been reminded by myself that whereas, yes, but where we are, Serena and Bujagari have the same owner. So Bujagari has a tax exemption till 2032, and yet there is also an exemption on luxury tourism facilities in excess of $10 million plus. And you know, Serena, tourism luxury, I digress. Let me go back to ABSA. I think that's a safer space. Otherwise, their contracts for hosting the venue here could also be affected. Mr. Seguaya, for you, because I know, I talk too much. I was going to say you are responsible for my paycheck today. I didn't realize you're seated next to the guy from URA, and we had not talked about what's net of tax and all that. I'll take my payment in cash. Mr. Seguaya, Absa Bank Uganda is not just a sponsor of today's conversation. You're a key actor in the financial ecosystem that must translate this budget into economic activity. The budget forecasts that Kampala startups, for example, are attracting more investment than ever. The budget tells us that mobile money transactions have hit 392.7 trillion annually, and that foreign direct investments stand at $3.2 billion US. The question is, access to affordable credit remains one of the most cited barriers for Ugandan SMEs, and I saw Mr. Walgembe in here, you will agree with me. Now tell us, from where you sit, what specifically can the banking sector, and specifically ABSA, what can you do differently in this financial year to ensure that growth numbers show up in your loan books and not necessarily as headline statistics in the Daily Monitor, for example?
Thank you very much, Simon. Actually, as you mentioned about the payment, I was told here by my neighbor that you need to withhold. It's a sign of what is to come.
And there was an increase on withholding tax, right? That
yes.
Effect
so, very good question. I think looking at credit, and I know there are discussions of crowding out the private sector, but let me first set some principles. As banks, our honest hope is that we can fund the private sector. Yes, government is borrowing. Yes, they are borrowing probably 15, 16%, and subsequently we price in that regard. And those are fundamentals. But we are cognizant that without supporting the private sector, we shall not have tomorrow's customer. So it becomes very important that we still focus. The other beauty about the budget is we did see different trends of credit. You can clearly see developmental finance being focused on. There's a bit of agriculture where they are clearly allocating some money, and I'm assuming it's cheaper. I think I did see in some of the slides probably less than 10%. So there are opportunities where you can get credit. What are we doing as banks? When you think about credit, you think about the different segments of credit. There are people borrowing in this country at about 40% per annum and plus. If you think about the quick money lenders, if you think about some of these areas which are not necessarily governed, and the rates at which they are giving, the work we are doing, especially for us as ABSA, is to try and open up that bracket. Think differently about the customer. How do we use your mobile money payments, as an example, to be part of the credit assessment? Because we are just realizing maybe not everybody will have their turnover through the bank account, but we need to recognize the different changes that are coming through. So there's a lot of transformation. When we roll out the Digi loan, we are saying, okay,
we recognize what mobile money is saying, but you are part of us, we know you, and we can also provide credit at better terms. Recognizing the fact that, yes, there may be more expensive opportunities elsewhere, but the fact that you are our customer, we understand you, we can provide credit in that regard. So I think for us, and even organizing this, is to say, look, there will be tough times ahead, but let's have the right conversations, the right compliance, let's understand you, and we shall extend credit. Thank you very much.
Tremendous. So for me, what I heard is we shall extend credit. What I didn't quite hear clearly is at what interest rate, but I believe that's going to be coming shortly. Madam Josephine Asaya, I really didn't know you were this close to me. I know you were in the room, but I didn't know you were this close when I was speaking about your former workplace. But it was not personal, really. It's just to say, part of drawing your attention to the fact that I'm also here. Susan, the PSST reiterated what was in the speech yesterday about accounting officers signing budget discipline charters as one of the measures of curbing corruption. Let's put it plainly. You sit at the helm of a media house that credits itself for checking and holding power to account every single day. You've done this for the case of NTV now 20 years, I am told. I don't want to believe it because it's only yesterday when I worked there. But it's taken you decades of holding government to account. But now government is putting in their own budget an allocation to ensure that there is accountability. Is it because they are listening more to you, or they have completely ignored you and they just hold you in total contempt that now they're going to do the accountability role themselves? And doesn't it, from where you sit, look like a case of Dracula superintending over a meeting at the blood bank?
I love the analogy. And I must be careful what I say, because these days, with the passing of the sovereignty bill, as media, we might be challenged with causing economic sabotage when we actually talk about the things that matter. But it's good to hear about budget discipline and the fact that government is invested in budget discipline. We don't know why it's taken so long. And of course, if you nominate and put into office people who are indisciplined, that's another case altogether. But the case for
I am glad you stopped right there. Now let's proceed in that direction.
But the case for budget discipline, it renders us as Ugandans quite useless when we see the same money that is collected from the taxpayer being wastefully, and I say wastefully, used by those who can use it. The PSST called it budget games. When we tried to hold Parliament to account last year, we paid the price for it. But we see how taxpayer money is abused on a daily. And we tell those stories, and we pay the price for telling those stories. Some of them seem unbelievable. Some of them seem very unbelievable.
Let's give Professor Sejak a company in clapping for Susan. Susan,
so it's not that we don't support the tax policies and the tax regimes and all that. But how is that money being used? The public wants to see accountability of that expenditure. The public wants to see why is it necessary for the supplementary budgets that the PSST has talked about. Yesterday it was presented. How soon before a supplementary budget is passed? And then again we have to ask those questions. So the question for us is government actually going to walk the talk because that's what it is. He's talked about execution, because we all know that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And in this case, in the boardrooms and in those silent rooms, everything that has been said here, we hope that government is actually going to walk the talk. But otherwise, as media, we will continue to do our job of holding government accountable. The classified expenditure that nobody knows anything about, but it goes way above what should be spent on education, what should be spent on health, what should be spent, and also the supplementary budgets for individual organizations. When you think about the money that is spent on a hospital on Entebbe Road, and you think about all the health centers within Uganda, you're like, we must ask questions. And of course, we are the ones who will be slapped for asking the questions, but that is our mandate, to hold government accountable. Thank you.
Wow. Ask all the questions you want to. We'll be glad and cheer you on from the comfort of your offices to the cold rooms they call jails. But at least you'll have done your job. Now, Susan, just like you said, you will ask all the questions. Truth is, everyone in this room has an opinion or two about the subject matter. And when my eyes dart across the room, I'm seeing old friends, good friends with whom we have these conversations and more conversations and other activities. Some of them, I can't recognize them in suits, like him, because he's always running. He knows himself. And many others. But I want to pose a particular exciting question to if there is someone from the Uganda National Oil Company. Do we have Peter Mulisa or Tony Otowa in this building? Okay, Tony is unmistakably conspicuous. Everyone in the room has black hair. Anyone from UNOC? There being none, but let's not forget that in the budget, we are told that the bigger percentage of our revenue in the next financial year will come from the proceeds of First Oil, which we are told, at least if anything to go by in the papers, anything to believe, could be starting to flow out of the ground this month. Hopefully, they meant of this year. So June, yes, but we never told the year. We wanted to know, does anyone know whether this will be true or not? So we'll park that, and I'll turn to maybe who catches my eye in the audience, because now the guys at the panel have spoken. Okay, Damali has decided to give me a breather. So Damali, quick one, then I got down to the audience. Yeah, the microphone is on.
Hello, okay. I can't give the answer you're particularly asking for, but I have a comment on the First Oil. First of all, I'm happy that we are getting our revenues from oil. And in the budget, it's about 1.4 trillion that is projected to come through this year from oil. But we need to put it in perspective. The current budget is 84 trillion. So the 1.4 trillion we're getting, of course, we're just starting, is a drop in the ocean. However, I think my comment is around the principle. We are planning to get this oil revenue and spend it in day-to-day. A budget is a day-to-day expenditure. And yet the oil revenue, any country that is successful in managing oil revenues, mineral revenues, there are three in the world: Norway for oil, Chile for oil, and also Botswana for mineral. So those countries that are most successful in managing natural resource wealth have one common factor. They all have a separate Financial Management Act that manages that money. So they never commingle day-to-day budget money with revenue from this natural resource, because the natural resource is a heritage. So oil is a heritage for all Ugandans. That money, we are supposed to hold it in perpetuity for all generations of Ugandans. So we are supposed to really have an Oil Revenue Management Act, where any money that comes from oil is managed through a separate process. And that act would define how much of that money should be invested in perpetuity, how much of that money can be used to pay for debt servicing, how much of that money can be used on day-to-day expenditure like paying service, public service people. So it would have very clear rules, but we don't have that. So right now we are we're starting to get the money, but we are throwing it in the pot, and we will find ourselves just spending this money. And if oil runs out in 50 years and we've spent all the money in 50 years, that will be such a disservice to a Ugandan who's going to be born in 100 years, when they could be incredibly rich. We could be in Norway if we do it correctly. So that's important, that the government puts a law in place that manages this money separately. We don't put it in the day-to-day kitchen expenditure.
As I have grown old, I try not to be very political, but Damali, you're tempting me to ask, and you're asking too much from a government that doesn't care about its own present children in its lifetime to plan for generations to come, like 50 years from today. But that question will be asked by more brave and younger journalists than myself. John Walugembe, sorry, I pick you out every time you are in an audience, and for perhaps the right reason. From the budget, we see that the cost of doing business is going to continue going higher, especially for small and medium enterprises where you are a supremo. I mean, fuel goes up and it has its cascading effect on everything. Cooking oil prices have now gone up, and you know what that does to the price of chapati and many other things that go along that line. I won't even begin to talk about the increased excise duty on alcohol. It's particularly very painful on a Friday morning to talk about. But make me happier. Tell me, what resilience do you still have under your wings that the small and medium enterprise of this country will continue to thrive and survive in spite of a budget that sometimes does not favor you, but favors the bigger boys, the ones who get tax exemptions, even when they are the most profitable companies as we stand, and they are at macro level? 2 minutes.
Thank you. I think the SME sector is resilient. I keep telling people that in hard times, some foreign investors will leave, but the SMEs will stay, regardless. In terms of the budget, I would say that the priorities are generally aligned with what we think as a sector. Of course, if I do a broad analysis, I think that 10.2% growth rate is extremely ambitious. Even with the oil, I think it's would need a miracle to jump from 6.4 to 10.2. I would say the investment in the wealth creation programs like Emyoga and so on, the 2.5 trillion, is something that we appreciate. I just hope that we reduce inefficiencies there in terms of how those funds are administered. I also think that we need to invest more in improving the cost of doing business. If you look at, sorry to say this, I don't know if we have someone from UEDCL. You're not treating us very well as small businesses. You know, I spoke with an entrepreneur. Their wood factory got burned 2 billion shillings because electricity is their Christmas lights. You see? So we need to be serious. If you are incapable of managing an enterprise, because we privatized for a reason. Now, if you choose that you are coming back, you had better come back in a good way so that you don't mess up things. The same advice goes to Uganda Airlines. I've used Uganda Airlines. Initially, the service was good, and the service can be good. But running an airline is not about acquiring more, a bigger fleet. You know, I was traveling from South Africa, and the AC just went berserk. Then I heard that at one time, a window went, either the bird hit a window, and then we were praising the pilot that is very good, that a bird, you know, so we need to be serious. If you're investing money in these public enterprises, we need to see results. So cost of doing business. The justice system, I have a case in Hoima circuit there. 5 years, a straightforward case. We are talking about alternative dispute resolution, but for businesses, we don't want to waste time. I have a simple case, let it be resolved very fast. So if you're investing in the judiciary, we also must we must seek results. In Kenya and Tanzania, when they are interviewing judges, it's public. They come and they're interviewed and the public feels, yeah, this is the best candidate. So there's room for improvement there. Cost of credit is still an issue, but that has many supply
and demand side factors. We recognize that even SMEs, we have a problem. Ugandans don't also want to pay. They are not good at bookkeeping, and we're happy that Professor led the team that worked on an e-accounting tool that we believe can help improve record keeping on the SME side. On the financial institution side, I'm a client of ABSA, by the way. Not just here, but even in South Africa, I have an account.
Mama.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm a dual client. Now we are asking you, come up with products that suit the SME sector. This elitist tag, we want to moderate it a bit so that more of our people can be able to benefit from your services. Allow me to stop there. Give me 2 minutes.
Thank you, and thanks for asking me to allow you to stop there. ABSA, your story matters. Should not be the story of the big boys and girls, but should be the story of everyone, but even specifically for the Walugembes who are allegedly struggling and running SMEs, but have bank accounts in Johannesburg and in Kampala. Interesting. Sorry, I will pick on you again, Josephine Osea. I need this room to understand that you have gathered here as an incredible communion of intelligent minds. Many of you have possibly never met, or you have only met in the pages of the Daily Monitor and on the screens of NTV, but today you are in the same room, and it would be nice that we hear from Josephine, who has been an astute finance professional, is now into the money markets, and may have one or two things to say on the nexus between what we see in our pockets, what budget is read by the Minister of Finance, and then where she superintends, which is the money markets. How can we be rich using her as a vehicle and knowing what works and doesn't work? I hope my question makes sense, because I know you're a very intelligent person.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Is it still morning? Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Good morning. First and foremost, thank you very much for this opportunity. And you're still in the energy sector, aren't you?
I change workplaces more often than some of you go to church in a year.
Anyhow, and I'll speak from the perspective of capital markets and the budget that was read yesterday. And I think one of the things that we are glad about is that when the Minister of Finance read the budget yesterday, one of the things he mentioned is that they are going to try and create some fiscal space by trying to maintain the debt sustainability. And as you recall, currently our debt to GDP ratio is sitting at about 53%. But also he did go ahead and mention that they are looking at other forms of innovative financing. And we believe that with the innovative financing, the things that he mentioned, Sukuk, which are the Islamic products, private-public partnerships, the venture capital, and all these other innovative instruments, including getting the state-owned enterprises to be able to tap into the capital markets. For us, we see that as a very welcome change because, for example, if you look at state-owned enterprises, some of them have strong balance sheets. If you look at entities like Housing Finance, Pride Bank, and now the Pearl Bank, those are entities that can actually come to the market and raise capital and not burden our budget. Institutions like National Housing, where are they still getting money from the consolidated fund? These are profitable entities that can actually come to market and free the money that they are giving to them for development of our country. And I'm glad to note that government has gone a long way in issuing the first sovereign sukuk. So what that does, it also opens space for other corporates to come to the market, and because that sets the pricing for that. So for us, with the reforms that they are talking about, we see is going to help reduce the debt burden and therefore deploy more money for development. Secondly, the ambition of the tenfold growth is not going to be managed by just debt, because that will push our debt sustainability to another level. And we know that we need about, 490 trillion or so to achieve the tenfold growth. We are working with the banks will take a bit of it, but I think most of that money is going to have to come from the capital markets, and we are engaging private sector to come to the market. I know one of the challenges we have is people don't appreciate the capital markets, but that's one place where you can get long-term patient capital. You want to build a plant, you borrow money from the bank, there will be timelines. You come to capital markets, you can borrow for as long as 20 years. So I think that's the thing that we are going to drive to ensure that people understand that. But I think for me, the welcome things I see is if government can actually get through with the fiscal discipline that they are talking about. Because we've had this before. But then come the end of the year, we still see that we are not seeing the fiscal discipline coming through. And then, as I think Damali mentioned, they are supplementary, I think it was Susan, supplementary budgets are coming in. But if we could only get disciplined and improve our execution, then the people on the ground will start to feel. We borrow money, we are supposed to say improve hospitals, no execution. Who feels the pinch? It's the people on the ground. So I think execution is key. If they can get through on execution, I think we'll see change. Thank you.
Thank you, Josephine. Now, Michael, maturity is allowing Josephine here to come and market her financial solutions like long-term patient capital better than what banks provide at an event paid for by a bank, and her microphone is not switched off. Thank you, Absa, for being mature. It means that you are complimentary. Josephine, is Capital Markets Authority a government agency? Yes. So she just came here and started saying that, you know, government agencies and departments and enterprises should not be going to the national coffers to pick money for development and all that, right? You heard her. She even gave examples. National housing, she mentioned other places. For you, where do you get your money? If you're not leading by example, we hang you here and now, and this is an era of mob justice, I will hold the log.
Maybe I should have started. So Capital Markets Authority is a regulator. So we are formed by an act of parliament. So we're actually a government authority.
And who finances you?
Government finances us. But you would be surprised what my budget is, how much I operate on. Mm-hmm. I operate on a budget. I've been operating on a budget of 9 billion shillings. Yeah? 9 billion. 9 billion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let me stop there.
Yeah. Because after all, I, Simon Kasiate, swear to you, and Michael, you can bear me witness or help me, I have never seen 1 billion shillings in one bundle in live notes, me. So when you tell me your budget is 9 billion, I don't know what you're talking about, unless today I pass by Hannington Road and Absa gives me the chance to look into their coffers. Now, Bonnie Kagaba, you're from Likana Safaris, and you have an important point to put across in this room. But let me give you some context. We were told that now tourism tickets are at an all-time high, in fact, higher than our pre-COVID times. In other words, muri bulungi nnyo. I hope that you're not coming to complain in this room that tourism is taking a nosedive, unless in specific reference to Ebola and other force majeures. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Simon, for the great opportunity. Protocol observed, and good morning. I think it's a morning. My name is Bonnie Kagaba, and I run a safari company called Likana Safaris Uganda. But when I'm not in safaris, I also teach at Makerere University Business School. Simon, I'm going to ask in context of tourism. You've given a very good background. Yesterday I saw we contributed close to $1.86 billion to this economy in the last financial year. But the allocations we saw, they're giving us only 500 billions. I know you've not seen a billion in your account, but I just want to give you context. And this is to the Absa boss, who is here. I would be so happy if you, at Absa Bank, start something related to tourism as a product. We've been so much ignored. I'm not saying farmers or agriculture should not be continued to be prioritized in your products, but tourism operators in Uganda, they are nowhere to be seen in the banking sector. We are trying to be a little bit not hard to government anymore, because it's private sector led. I've seen Sarah has been here, Madam Sarah Kajingo, but roads are bad, and we are buying cars after getting maybe loans from Absa Bank. From here to Bwindi Impenetrable National Park, which is bringing in billions of dollars. If you didn't know, I invite you to go and see gorillas for 1 hour. As a Ugandan, you will pay close to $300,000, but a foreign non-resident will pay $800. So if we just marketed Uganda and have close to 1 million arrivals seeing the gorillas, we could be almost having $8 million just in one single year on gorillas alone. We are not talking about Serena bookings in the hotels and what, just seeing the gorillas. And Simon, we are not marketing. I wish if Absa Bank could design a product, number one, to support tour operators to pick money, go to London, go to Atletico Madrid, go to Spain, to market Uganda as a destination, courtesy of Absa. Give us loans as tour operators so that we de-risk our operations. We will definitely make money, and even the $500 billion dollar dream of PSS, I think it was here in the morning, would be just reached before 2040. But roads are bad. This is for government. Security well done. And then from nowhere, this May, June, July, this is our season to work. Minister of Health says we have Ebola, and we don't have Ebola. I can tell you because just see the behavior of people in the city. We've had cancellations. Absa Bank, I bank with you. Absa Bank Chireka. I went there to send money back, $45,000 back in cancellations. They are not coming. And they're like, once we want to go to other alternative countries. So, Simon, I really don't know, and thank you, NTV, for putting the picture out there for us. We are here advocating for tourism, which is like not bothered about. People think it's a luxury, but it's a money-making kind of sector, which if Absa Bank just got interested in, it would be great. URA is seated on the panel, maybe. They can tell you how much money they register every single day. Uganda Wildlife Authority sends them credit we give them in advance of the gorillas, the park entrances, the chimpanzee permits. Then what more can we ask for as tour operators if we are not prioritized? Simon, we're not saying we want $10 billion or $10 trillion to invest in tourism marketing, but let's be prioritized and make money in this economy and create jobs for the young people. I employ close to 12 young people. They get $50 every single day. They're on a safari for 15 days, 10 days, 80 days, okay, and that's Bonnie, the value chain.
Pardon
so
me for
we are not happy, and we are here to lament. If Absa, you can think about us, make for us some good products, and it will be very great. Thank you.
Folks, do you agree with me that the tourism sector has become something else? We thought they only had one Amos Wekesa, but looks like when Amos is away in South Africa marketing, he leaves Bonnie and many others in the room. They will speak until kingdom come. But thank you, Bonnie. That's been taken note of. Michael, you brought this upon yourself, so prepare money for the tourism people. But before you come in, we are about to conclude this conversation. And I'm going to have an omnibus of 2 other or 3 other comments or questions, briefly, 1 minute from the audience, and then we go back to our panel to give their closing remarks before we cut it out. And I'll start with you, Dr. Agnes Atim. For many reasons. One, you are an advisor on Operation Wealth Creation in the office of the president or the vice president. You are a former member of parliament for Amolata, at least that I remember. And you are also very highly invested in matters finance and investment. It would be nice for you to chime in and share with us, especially on these government interventions of this free money, PDM, Operation Wealth Creation, blah, 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 blah. Honestly, I haven't seen my share and I don't even know where to start, but you tell us how that happens. Then before you exit the room, I saw a tech survey guy, Mike Niitege, and I'm told if we don't talk technology and innovation, we will be in trouble, and that conversation must be had for 1 minute or 2. So Michael, be on standby. I've seen you walking. Sarah Kajingo from the Private Sector Foundation. It would be a disservice for all of us in the hustle economy not to hear from you as our Private Sector Foundation guru on how we can fit into this whole conversation. And when we are done with those 3 questions and comments, I will allow my friend Coach Bob at the back to just stretch you for 30 seconds because it's important for you to have a stretch after these 3. Hey, Bob, I didn't say now. Bob, I didn't say now. Okay, fine. And then we can conclude it with the panel here in 1, 2 tab. So, Dr. Atim, 2 minutes. Michael, 1.5 minutes. And then Sarah, if she's back in the room, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, the panelists, but also our chief guest, who gave us a very good overview of the budget. 2 or 3 One, we need to appreciate the fact that the PSST gave us a commitment of government getting into issues of discipline and accountability. But as ordinary Ugandans, we want to see this taken to a level of implementation. Because the biggest challenge you see in that budget is that we are paying close to 34 trillion on interest payment. And this interest, unfortunately, comes from some of the loans that we get and we don't implement it. And at the moment, we have, I think I did some quick analysis some time back, and the World Bank would excuse me if they are here, that our implementation for particularly some of the projects under the World Bank is just close to 30% of the money that we've already signed on. So I think as a country, one of the things that we would really be more interested to see is the commitment to implement what we promise the country. And so that requires a little bit more frugal intervention, which I didn't see coming out very strongly. Secondly, is on the issue of taxation. And I appreciate